Chapter 11. There was something about Aunt Polly's manner when she kissed Tom that made him happy again. He went to school and had the luck of meeting Becky Thatcher in the street. Without a moment's hesitation, he ran to her and said, "I did a bad thing today, Becky, and I'm so sorry. I won't ever do it again as long as ever I live. Let us be friends again, please." The girl stopped and looked at him. "Please keep to yourself, Mr. Thomas Sawyer. I'll never speak to you again." And she went away. Tom was so shocked that he didn't say a word. And he was angry. Becky was angry too. She looked forward to seeing that bad boy whipped for the ink in the spelling book. Poor Becky, she did not know that she was near trouble herself. The teacher, Mr. Dobbins, was not satisfied with his life. He wanted, above all things, to be a doctor. Every day he took a mysterious book out of his desk and read it any time that he didn't have to speak to his pupils. He kept that book under lock and key. Every child in school was dying to take a look at it, but the chance never came. Now, as Becky was passing by the desk, which stood near the door, she noticed that the key was in the lock. It was a perfect moment. She looked around, found no one else, and the next moment she had the book in her hands. The front page, Professor Somebody's Anatomy, carried no information to her, so she began to turn the pages. She found at once a picture, a human figure. At that moment, Tom Sawyer showed up at the door and saw the girl with the book in her hands. Becky hurried to close the book and tore a page with the picture in half. She put the book back in the desk, turned the key, and burst out crying with shame. "Oh, what shall I do, Tom Sawyer? You know you're going to tell the teacher I did it. And oh, what shall I do? What shall I do? I'll be whipped, and I have never been whipped in school." "Be so awful if you want to. I know something that's going to happen. You'll see." Tom was surprised to hear that. Then he said to himself, "What a curious kind of fool a girl is. Never been whipped in school. What's a whipping? That's just like a girl. They're so weak. Well, of course I'm not going to tell old Dobbins on this little fool. But old Dobbins will ask who tore his book. Nobody will answer. Then he'll do just the way he always does. Ask first one, and then the other, and when he comes to the right girl, he'll know it, without any telling. Girls' faces always tell. She'll get a whipping. Well, it's a bad thing for Becky Thatcher, because there isn't any way out of it." Tom joined the children in the yard. In a few moments, the teacher arrived and called them in. Tom did not feel a strong interest in his studies. When he looked at the girl's side of the room, Becky's face worried him. He felt sorry for her. Soon, Mr. Dobbins found the spelling book. Becky did not expect that Tom could get out of his trouble by denying that he spilled the ink on the book himself. And she was right. It made the thing even worse for Tom. Becky thought she would be glad to see that, and she tried to believe she was glad, but she was not sure. She even thought that she should get up and tell on Alfred Temple, but she forced herself to keep still. "Because," said she to herself, "he'll tell about me tearing the picture. I wouldn't say a word, not to save his life." Tom took his whipping and went back to his seat. He thought it was possible that he had unknowingly spilled the ink on the spelling book himself, and he denied it because it was his habit. A whole hour passed. Then Mr. Dobbins unlocked his desk and reached for his book. Most of the pupils quickly looked at him and went on reading. But there were two among them who watched his movements with great interest. Mr. Dobbins thought for a few seconds, and then took the book out. Tom saw Becky. She seemed frightened to death. He forgot his quarrel with her. Quick, something must be done. Done very quickly, too. First he thought he could run and snatch the book from Mr. Dobbins and run away with it. But as he thought, the chance was lost. The teacher opened the book. Too late. There was no help for Becky now, he said. The next moment, the teacher's face turned red. There was silence. The teacher was becoming more and more angry. Then he spoke. Who tore this book? There was not a sound. The teacher studied face after face. Benjamin Rogers, did you tear this book? No, sir. Joseph Harper, did you? No, sir. Mr. Dobbins looked at the boys' benches, thought for a minute, then turned to the girls. Amy Lawrence? No, sir. Gracie Miller? No, sir. Susan Harper, did you do this? No again. The next girl was Becky Thatcher. Tom realized that the situation was hopeless. Rebecca Thatcher. Tom looked at her face. It was white. Did you tear? No. Look me in the face. Did you tear this book? Then a thought ran through Tom's head. He jumped up and shouted, I did it, sir. All the children looked at Tom. They refused to believe that he could be such a fool. But Tom took without a sound the most cruel whipping that he ever had, because he knew who would wait for him after school. Tom went to bed that night, planning revenge against Alfred Temple. Becky had told him everything. But when he fell asleep, he could still hear Becky's words. Tom, how could you be so noble? Soon summer vacation came. Becky Thatcher went away to stay with her parents in their summer home. So the life for Tom was no longer bright. In the middle of the summer, the sleepy town changed. The murder trial was approaching. Everyone began to talk about Muff Potter. Tom could not get away from it. He was nervous all the time, more than anybody else, because he and his friend knew something which nobody else knew. He took Huck to a lonely place to have a talk with him. He wanted to make sure that Huck had kept quiet. Huck, have you ever told anybody about that? About what? You know what. Oh, of course I haven't. Not a word? Of course not a word. What makes you ask? Well, I was afraid. Why? Tom Sawyer, we wouldn't live for 2 days if Injun Joe found out. You know that. Tom felt more comfortable, and he said, Well, that's all right then. I think we're safe as long as we keep quiet. But let's swear again anyway. I agree. So they swore again to keep quiet about the murder. Huck, don't you feel sorry for Muff Potter sometimes? Always. We know that he didn't hurt anyone. He just drinks too much. But he's a good man. He gave me half a fish once, when there wasn't enough for 2 of us. And he helped me many times when I was out of luck. Well, he repaired kites for me, Huck. Perhaps we could get him out of there. We couldn't get him out, Tom. And besides, it wouldn't do any good. They'd catch him again. Yes, they would. The boys had a long talk. In the evening, they came to the little jail, perhaps with a hope that something or somebody would help Muff Potter. But nothing happened. No angels or fairies were interested in this luckless prisoner. The boys did what they had often done before, gave Potter some tobacco and matches. He was on the ground floor, and there were no guards. Potter said, "Thank you, boys. You've been very good to me, boys. Better than anybody else in this town, and I'll never forget it." And Tom felt how his heart hurt. He went home sad, and his dreams that night were full of horrors.